TNTMTheShow presents
August Talking Nerdy,
with your host, Pablo Gunner.
the ambassador,
Marvin Goof, baby.
And we are here to talk nerdy to you about all the nerdy stuff, or as much of the nerdy stuff that we could cover as possible for the month of August. So we're going to be covering Lord of the Rings of Power Season 2, 3-episode premiere. And then we're going to do some shout-outs, talk about the merch, and talk about what our charity of the month is going to be for September. Lord of the Rings of Power Season 2, 3-episode premiere.
well, I still don't know why they're making the series, because it makes no sense. I mean, with the type of writing they're doing, I'm going to make a Wicked movie based on just using material from The Wizard of Oz and see what happens. If you're going to make a Wicked movie, you probably should do the book. Or I'm going to write a movie about Islam, but I'm going to use the Christian Bible. It's just not going to work very well because, yeah, some of the sources in there do cover a little bit, but you're also leaving a lot out. And so it doesn't work that well if you're trying to tell a story.
Okay.
If you're leaving out big details, like you can't use Cimmerils because they're not in the appendix of Return of the King.
Okay, because I admit I've never read the Silmarillion. I don't know a lot about that.
I've
ancient
read a
part of the
little
history,
bit of
but-
Cimmerillion,
Mhm.
but basically the Cimmerils are kind of the source of the Rings of Power.
Okay.
And because they didn't have the right for that, they used Mithril instead.
Here's a pretty thing. Mithril. As light as a feather, and as hard as dragon scales.
Okay.
Which is really weird choice. They changed the elvish motivation for having the Rings of Power, which makes zero sense if you even look at Lord of the Rings and compare it. Because basically they claim that the elves were dying because the trees were dying, so they were losing light. They had to use the rings to revive the race. I guess the trees should have died a long time ago if you're using that logic. Because if you go to present, if you do Lord of the Ring movies, who's wearing one of the elvish rings?
Galadriel?
No.
No? I thought she was.
She
Okay.
was, but there's another character in all 6 of the Peter Jackson movies that has a elvish
That's
ring
right.
on there.
It's
Gandalf.
Okay.
Yeah. And Gandalf's not elf. He has an elvish name, Mithrinder, but he's not elvish. Essentially, if he's wearing the ring, it wouldn't preserve the elves like it's supposedly supposed to.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
that's already a plot hole if you're just going off of the origins. But they do this really weird thing where they made up this orc character that's more closer to being elf than an orc. But he's like he was a big baddie in the first season. But Anador, he doesn't exist in the source material at all. But
Okay.
they basically, he tells them something that sounded really dumb in the first season, that he killed Sauron. But you watch the first episode, and they do like a cheesy Julius Caesar, where they're all killing Sauron, him and the rest of the orcs. But Sauron's black blood turns into goop and drips underneath a cave and gradually starts eating more and more bugs, and then eventually gets out of the cave after a very long time and gets caught on a wagon wheel and then eats a person, and then that's how he gets his human form. I'm just not a fan of Rings of Power. It feels like they're crapping on a lot of what Tolkien did. And Tolkien did so much amazing writing it's sad to see like not using it. I think if you're not gonna have the rights, don't try to do that story. If you're not gonna have the material you need to cover it, because all of this is based on 2 pages from the Return of the King appendix.
Definitely not too much to go off of then, huh?
Yeah. When the Silmarillion does go into details of the Second Age and how the rings were made. And the dwarfs were done like little children, which makes no sense because dwarfs should, even though they're greedy, they should have some type of maturity to them because dwarfs live 300 to 400 years. They live longer. The dwarf king acting like a child doesn't really make much sense. And dwarves are supposed to be these great engineers, but when they have a problem, and well, initially in the first season the elves wanted the Mithril to build to save their people, and they refused the deal for like 500 years worth of food and supplies to let them have some Mithril. In this season, Sauron doing his stuff, he had manipulated the elves into creating the 3 elvish rings by like telling them how they could do it, and really likes the idea of rings and the binding power they have, and so he wants to create more, but unfortunately Galadriel found out he was Sauron because she found out that who he was claiming to be wasn't it, because the line of the Sutherland kings had been broken, so he wasn't really heir to the Southern Kingdom like he claimed to be. And so instead of doing like the most logical thing, where you know that guy's Sauron and you gotta go tell the High Elf Lord, maybe tell Celebrimbor, who made the rings, hey, by the way, this guy's Sauron. Instead, she just says, don't associate with him, and leaves. And pretty much sets up the whole premise of the show where Sauron's working with him to create the rings.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then it feels like that's a skip out, would you say?
I would give it a pass.
Pass, alright.
So I'm not like the ambassador. I'm not a hater, and I don't get hung up on semantics. And so none of, like, almost any of that stuff doesn't matter. Like, I will say him essentially being the symbiote, that I was like, he's a symbiote now? What? I don't understand
He's
this.
supposed to be like
that
a
was
god.
dumb, right? Well, I was just like, that doesn't make any sense to me, because it had no explanation. I didn't even know that was him, because it was like, that didn't look like the character from the first season, and until he got like you said, reanimated or whatever. That's when I was like, oh, that looks like the person. I was like, is this a... So I will say, the writing's not perfect. I'm not saying this is a perfect show at all. But what I am focusing on is the tone and the characters and the writing and the show itself and not all those other things. Because I was like, is this a flashback or is this present? And that was confusing, right? When you are not writing well enough whether or not this is a flashback or not. Because I didn't rewatch the previous season for this or the finale or anything like that. So I'm just jumping in, even though I did watch the first season, right? And I did enjoy the first season. And I think that's most people. I think most people are just like, hey, I feel like it has the look, it has the tone, it had the characters I feel like are done pretty well. And that's how that is. And that's what I'm enjoying. Like, I love the couple, the dwarf couple that's Prince and Princess of the King Dwarf. Like, I love those two characters. I mean, I love majority of the characters, and I really want to see how the Rings of Power came to be the Rings of Power. I want to see the fall. That's like what I want to see is the fall of Middle Earth, right? Because we already saw that, the other half, but I want to see it now, and I want it to make sense. And so, like, some stuff, yeah, the side stories, you go like, I don't know why I should care about these random people.
what's with the chimp and the bug? Can we get back to me?
I don't know why this matters. You know, somewhat, and even those characters, you're like, yeah, I kind of like them. You know, whatever, depends. You know, they do tend to focus more on, like you said, the guy that makes the rings, and then him getting tricked into with Sauron, who is like this weird character. So I'm not saying it's perfect, because it is confusing. It is slow, and like, and even at first,
claiming Sauron tricked her when she was forcing everything on him, and he didn't want to go to the Sutherlands in the first season. Makes no sense.
Which they talked about that, right? Like, even Elrond says, he's like, you wanted these things to happen.
Oi! Omae! Hi. 割れ頭はどこだ? なんだ知らねえのか。果てしなき天然だな。なんでわからないのあれで。さすがに呆れるぜ。ここにはいねえみてえだぞ。
So you allowed him to play you like an instrument.
But he wasn't playing her.
But he was, though, because
he
allowed it to happen. He didn't have to go with it, you know? I mean, it's all part of this master plan.
You know? It's not a master plan.
So
she was dragging him around.
Some things are meant to happen, right? Even if it's horrible things. I mean, look at our political systems. Anyways, right? They mirror things. These things are, they mirror. And so, but I'm just saying, like, overall, like, yeah, I'm not going to say it's a perfect show. Definitely not. The writing is not the best out there. I feel like they get the tone. I feel like they get the look. I like the characters. It's not perfect, but I'm not going to get hung up on little things. That's not going to ruin it for me. So for me, I'm going to say, especially right, because it's just so far. We're only at episode 3, you know, as a premiere. That's rare, but I kind of feel like they needed that. They would have been okay with just that first episode, but I feel like they kind of needed that 3 episode to really bring people in and hook them. Because it's now, I'm like, where it's at, I'm like, okay, you got me. Now, just based off that first episode where we have symbiote Sauron, and it's confusing, I would have been like, I don't know about this season. But then when because you gave me all 3 seasons, you left it where you left it, I'm going to keep on watching. So, that being said, it's worth checking out for me.
Okay.
Here at Talk Nerdy to Me, our grade scale is must see, must stream, unless it's something that you can buy, of course. And then check it out, or worth checking out, and then pass. So for shoutouts, we have MK Wizard. She is now at the top of that list every time because she's phenomenal. You've seen some of the videos. You may or may not have seen some of the videos I've done with her, and they're great. We have this great conversation back and forth. So definitely check out all of her stuff because it's great. Film Rage, those guys are hilarious. They cover movies, so if you're a hardcore movie person, definitely listen to them because they cover stuff ASAP, and they'll keep you on the know, and then they're hilarious. Pesky Gremlins, they do web comics like MK Wizard, so check that out. Watch It If You Can podcast, they're awesome. Amerime Media, they're really cool as well. And then for merch.
But Yogurt, what is this place? What is it that you do here? Merchandising.
Merchandising? What's that?
Merchandising. Come, I'll show you. Open up this door. Come, walk this way. Take a look. We put the picture's name on everything.
For the new month, for September, it's going to be Lord of the Rings. It's mainly going to be focused because everybody loves the books and the movies, so it's mainly going to be focused on that, but we are going to have some Rings of Power merch as well, so keep an eye out for that. It's going to be coming out, and we're going to be leaving our Batman stuff, maybe come up with some more, I don't know. And, of course, we're sporting our merch now.
Here it is right there.
We have...
this hat as well.
The Pokemon hat, pretty much the Ash Ketchum Talk Nerdy to Me hat. And our Magic,
lovely
right?
Magic the Gathering shirt. This one's my favorite, actually.
MTG. The good MTG.
The good MTG.
Yeah. So, an ambassador?
Got my Ninja Turtles Talk Nerdy to Me shirt.
Yes. And I got one too. Mine's blue tank top right here. And I got the shorts to go with it. I want the headband and the socks. And so if you buy any merch from us, it helps us greatly. I mean, we really don't make a lot of money off the merch, but 5% of any profit that we go to, we have a different charity for the month. And so for the new month, it's going to be AFSP, which is American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, as it is Suicide Prevention Month. There's also Hispanic Heritage Month is halfway through the month. That's why I'm not going to do the whole month, but we're going to roll out some merch for that, as we have some Azul Beetle and probably some Miles Morales. We'll probably roll that out too, and then any other characters that we can think of that we love, we're inspired by, and everything like that. That's it, unless you guys have anything else.
Look out for a review of the new 5th edition Player's Handbook.
Awesome.
That's coming out in a few weeks. I'll hopefully turn that out here in a bit.
Cool. Talk nerdy to me.
Stay nerdy, planet Earth.
Keep it nerdy, y'all.